Thank you, Admiral. And again, I would please, from this committee, pass on our compliments to all the members of the Coast Guard who are doing such great work for our country. I wanted to start by drilling down into an issue that's very Alaska-specific, but I think it's a broader issue with regard to how individual agency decisions in one part of the Federal Government can dramatically impact another agency's resources. So over a year ago, the people of King Cove were denied a reliable, life-saving road that would provide medical emergency access because of the decision by Secretary Jewell at the Department of Interior not to allow for that road. During that time, the Secretary in her decision stated she understood the need for reliable methods of medical transport for lives and safety for the residents of King Cove, Alaska, but have concluded that other methods of transport remain and could be improved to meet the community's needs. She never identified any other methods and alternatives, and so what's happened is that the brave men and women of the Coast Guard have been asked and have admirably functioned their mission to fly dangerous evacuation missions in very poor weather conditions. Since Secretary Jewell denied the road in King Cove, there have been 7 Coast Guard medevacs, most recently on February 22nd, 2015. How much do each of these evacuations from King Cove to Cold Bay cost the Coast Guard? Do you know?
Mr. Chairman, those cost approximately $42,000 per medevac. That's a financial cost, but there's also a cost of risk. As you know, this is not a benign operating environment.
No.
So there's also the real risk that comes with the expenditure of those flights.
A real risk to the brave men and women flying those flights.
Yes, sir.
So, as you probably know, and we certainly believe in Alaska, the Secretary of Interior could fix this issue with the stroke of a pen. Have there been any discussions at all for the Department of Interior reimbursing the Coast Guard for these expenses, which, again, in a year and a half have grown quite significantly?
There have been no such discussions.
Okay. I'd like to next turn to an issue that I think is on everybody's list here, and you talked about it. I'd like you to drill down a little bit more in your testimony with regard to the need for a offshore patrol cutter and the new icebreaker with regard to the priorities at the top of your list. How will you manage the acquisition, construction, and improvement funding needed for these priorities as the funding for these type of requirements continues to decline? I'm going to submit for my written testimony how much the decline in your budget has gone over the last few years, but how are you trying to manage that as the decline is occurring?
Yeah. Several key elements of our acquisition portfolio, right now the largest being our national security cutter, and we just awarded the final contract for the 8th national security cutter, which is the program of record for that platform. And I cannot say enough great things about what this platform is doing, not just for our Coast Guard, but for our nation overall on a global scale. So the national security cutter, I'm quite pleased with its performance. We've used a commercial off-the-shelf design to recapitalize our patrol boat fleet with our fast response cutters using fixed-price contracts, and we will recompete those. The first phase of that will build 32. After that, the next 26, with emphasis on affordability through open and fair competition as we look at building that out. And similarly, we've done a lot of homework on the offshore patrol craft with an emphasis on meeting our mission demands. One is operating globally, which means in a sea state 5, which is really 8 to 13-foot seas, where it can still launch boats, helicopters, perform missions, but do so in an affordable way, and again, using fixed-price contracting. We've solicited out to 3 bids. We've had great support from this committee in bringing on 14 C-27J aircraft at no cost to the Coast Guard, which avoided a $500 million expenditure which I would be woeful to find those funds to recapitalize my fixed-wing squadron within the Coast Guard as well. And so, at the same time, we're extending the service life of 140-foot icebreakers, our 225-foot buoy tenders, to extend their service life out as we get at these most critical priorities within the budget constraints that we have right now.
Great. Thank you. We might have a second round of questions here, but my time is up, so Senator Nelson.
I'm going to